Thank you, thank you. The reason that I created this podcast is because I want to feel better. So many of the right-wing talk show hosts that I've listened to over the years make me feel worse, more anxious, more fearful, angrier. And I want to feel better, and I want the people who listen to my podcast to feel better after having listened to it than they did at the beginning.
That's what got my dad. His heart attacked and killed him, and he was lying on his bed, and boom, dead on the floor. You know, as they said, it was instantly. And my dad, he wasn't expecting it. He was looking for Arabs and shit, and his heart attacked and killed him, and he was dead, like, instantaneously. And sad. We were all sad. People will just try to make you feel better. They'll say anything, you know. One guy said to me, "Don't worry, Norm. He died in his sleep. He didn't feel a thing." And I was like, really? When his heart attacked and killed him, he didn't? Because I wake up like if my cat walks across my belly. You know that? I don't know if my dad was that sound asleep. One guy said he's in a better place. I said he's on the floor. Dead. Earlier, he was alive on the bed. With that Tempur-Pedic pillow I bought him for Christmas.
Good morning. It's Friday, Policecraft Friday, March the 29th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, the 33 strategies of war, and policecraft. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
When first the sun o'er ocean glowed, and earth unveiled her virgin breast, supreme mid-nature's vast abode, was heard the Almighty's dread behest. Rise, Columbia, Columbia, brave and free. Poise the globe and bound the sea. Rise, Columbia, Columbia, brave and free. Poise the globe and bound the sea. Revered in arms, in peace humane, no shore nor rail shall bound thy sway, while all the virtues own thy reign, and subject elements obey. Rise, Columbia, Columbia, brave and free. Bless the globe and rule the sea. Rise, Columbia, Columbia, brave and free. Bless the globe and rule the sea.
Thank you. And now, sports.
This 100-meter final in Seoul, Korea, has been labeled the dirtiest race in Olympic history, and this is why.
And it's a fair start, and it's Raymond Kerr with a start, and it's Ben Johnson with a start. Can Kerr catch him? No! It's Ben Johnson! Ben Johnson does it again!
A new world record has been set.
9-7-9!
Jamaican-born sprinter, now representing his new home Canada, had just beaten the former Olympic champion Carl Lewis.
I just don't know how he does it.
However, within 24 hours of being presented the gold medal, he would be stripped of everything.
Ben Johnson fails a drug test, is stripped of the gold medal.
It was later revealed that 6 of the 8 finalists lined up on that September day failed drug tests themselves.
I mean, it's been a very sad day for athletics on the whole.
When asked about the fateful race in Seoul, Johnson replied, quote, "I left for Korea as a Canadian,
Having been from the Canadian team,
but returned Jamaican-born."
In Paris. And Blake once again, as he did a week ago, had a good start. Omanyala is ahead now, but here comes Lyles at the line, and I believe he catches the fastest man in the world this year, and Lyles will take the victory in Paris.
Handstand, let's go. Come on, Allie, come on. Come on. Come on. Come on, catch it. Nice. Come on, come on. Catch. Let's go, let's go. Catch it. Just the hop, just the hop.
Stick it, please.
Stick it. Stick it. Yeah.
It's okay.
Everyone's older than me. Everyone's bigger.
You don't have to tackle.
Bob, listen to me. No, Bob, listen to me. Trust me. Look at me. Look at me, Bob. I'm the shortest kid here. Listen, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're short, you're young. It doesn't matter if you're tall or hit. It doesn't matter if you're fat. It doesn't matter if you're tall. Bob, you are a brilliant rugby player. You understand that? You're insane. You're actually insane for your age. You're insane. Come here, give me a hug.
Best teammate
It's
ever.
all right, all right?
Best
You're
teammate.
really good.
Come on.
Come on. So come on.
They're eating hot dogs and nachos, and the vets are having a good time over there. And I'm starving. I don't eat before games. I decided to join the veterans, man. So I'm throwing out the hot dogs and the Doritos, whatever we're eating over there. And then the coach comes over and says, "Hey, Davis, you're in on kickoff coverage."
So he's got a belly full of hot dogs, maybe some Doritos. He wanted to quit. He's on kickoff coverage, and this happens.
Tyrone Drakeford takes it at the 9 for the 49ers, and it's belted at the 19-yard line. Woo! Absolutely crushed by rookie Terrell Davis.
What they didn't show was I went back to the bench and threw up.
Break us down to the immaculate reception.
I never thought he caught the ball, but he did. I remember running out on the field. I'm just trying to get a first down. Called another pass, no good. Called another pass, none of them even close. And I'm just play with circle option. Option being safety comes up, go post, he stays back. But I got flushed out of the pocket. actually ended up seeing the picture, and he caught the ball. It's about 10 inches off the ground. Now, who hit the ball last? The rule back then was if Frenchie touched it last, we can't receive it. Someone from the Raiders has to touch it after Frenchie, and then we can receive it, and it's our ball. So did Tatum hit it last, or did Frenchie hit it last? That was the argument.
Y'all don't want to win a championship because we got a bunch of lowlifes in here. And they start laughing like some of y'all, like lowlifes, really? You can call it lowlifes? You know, and I'm like, yeah, lowlife. Because we got volunteer firemen walking around here cleaning up after grown men, right? My locker, your locker, is 2 feet from the garbage can. You come off, cut your tape off your ankles, your wrists, and instead of you throwing it in the garbage can, where you throw it at? On the floor. I'm like, listen, guys, this is the little things, man. Pick up your towel. You walking out, the dirty bin is right there when you walk out. Why you leaving that towel in there for somebody else to come in there and clean up? I did it myself because I didn't want the firemen to have to look at my nasty-ass teammates' towels and have to pick them up all the time.
They didn't allow my national record to be qualified for the state record. A.O. Williams comes to me and he says, look, they're not going to acknowledge your national record. I went, what do you mean? He says, well, you got to throw it in the state meet. Well, okay. What's the state record? It was like 202 feet. I warm up at 210. I knew I was going to break the record. I go down to Northwestern State College where the state meet was, and I warm up, and it's my throw, and I throw 239 something on the first throw. I just got
a mic drop and just walk out.
I just went down there kind of arrogantly and got it, put it back in its sleeve, put it in my metal bucket, screwed the lid on it, waved goodbye to all you boys. I went and sat up in the bleachers with my coach and watched these guys try to break it, which nobody came close to. And I threw it one time and got the record, and it still stands.
And that was sports. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Patriotic Shorts.
A new investigative series from Army Times uncovers how the Army's overworked tank units suffered high suicides. For a decade, armor units have deployed almost nonstop. We used records requests to build a first-ever database of Army deaths, and what I found stunned me. Tank crews were nearly 3 times more likely to kill themselves than other soldiers, and other Armor Brigade members were also at high risk. I also noticed a shocking pattern at Fort Carson, Colorado. 1st Battalion's 66th Armor Regiment suffered 6 suicides in 14 months. Soldiers from the Iron Knight Battalion told me the deaths came during an intense training cycle. They had little time at home, and they're not okay. Mental health experts say overwork increases suicide risk, but the Army's suicide prevention program largely has not accounted for this. Hear the Iron Knight stories and see our data at armytimes.com.
When 20-year-old Robert Preston stole a Huey helicopter in 1974, all he wanted to do was protest what he saw as being unfairly flunked out of flight school. But things escalated quickly as he left Fort Meade and followed the lights of the Baltimore-Washington Parkway all the way to the National Mall. As he buzzed the Washington Monument, followed by the Capitol, police chased him, but were unable to stop him from reaching the White House, where he hovered for a while and then flew off. Heading back up the Baltimore-Washington Parkway, the failed pilot managed to evade police helicopters again and again as he maneuvered just inches above traffic. Eventually, Preston realized he was going to get caught, but rather than return to base to face the stockade, he decided he would surrender to Nixon himself. As he approached the South Lawn, however, Secret Service opened fire, punching giant holes into the side of the Huey and injuring the pilot. When it was all over and he was finally brought to the hospital, he was laughing like hell.
For distinguished gallantry and valor above and beyond the call of duty as commanding officer of the USS Growler during her 4th War Patrol in the Southwest Pacific from January 10th to February 7th, 1943. Boldly striking at the enemy in spite of continuous hostile air and anti-submarine patrols, Commander Howard Gilmore sank one Japanese freighter and damaged another by torpedo fire, successfully evading severe depth charges following each attack. In the darkness of night on February 7th, an enemy gunboat closed range and prepared to ram the Growler. Commander Gilmore daringly maneuvered to avoid the crash and rammed the attacker instead, ripping into her port side at 17 knots and bursting wide her plates. In the fire of the sinking gunboat's heavy machine guns, he calmly gave the order to clear the bridge, and refusing safety for himself, remained on deck while his men preceded him below. Struck down by the rapid burst of bullets and having done his utmost against the enemy, in his final living moments, Commander Gilmore gave his last order to the officer of the deck: take her down. The Growler dived, seriously damaged but under control. She was brought safely to port by her well-trained crew, inspired by the courageous fighting spirit of their dead captain.
Ooh, there was some guy flying on my wing, like real close. And it was Johnny England, and he had 2 kills already. John England, England Air Force Base, Louisiana. This is the guy the base was named after later. And he was down low. He had his mask off, and he was grinning, and he kind of gave me a sign like that. And then where he was and everything, I thought, did he shoot that thing down out from under me? I knew that it was a lucky shot. It was an absolute golden BB.
He dropped out of college and enlisted in the Coast Guard to save lives, not take them, he told his sister. He's the only member of the Coast Guard to receive a Medal of Honor in its over 200-year history. He was Signalman First Class Douglas Munro, and during the Battle of Guadalcanal, he was in charge of 24 Higgins boats engaged in a daring evacuation of Marines trapped at Point Cruz. Munro volunteered to take 4 landing craft into enemy fire to attract their attention, while the other 20 boats evacuated the beleaguered Marines. They came under unrelenting fire, with 12 Coast Guardsmen losing their life, including Munro, who died in his best friend Ray Evans' arms, his last words asking if they got the Marines off safely. Among the rescued Marines was future Medal of Honor recipient John Basilone. Inspired by her son, Munro's mother Edith enlisted in the Coast Guard's Women's Reserves, where she would serve out the war. The two are buried side by side at Laurel Hill Memorial Park in Washington State.
This is a P-51 Mustang. It's a streamlined, athletic-looking plane, and this is the P-47. You could have literally fit a P-51 inside the P-47 with room to spare. It simply doesn't look the part, but what if I told you its frame was purpose-built to fit one incredibly powerful supercharged engine, the massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, a 2-row, 18-cylinder, air-cooled radial engine with a massive displacement of 46 litres. The Merlin engine of the Spitfire and P-51 Mustang, for comparison, one of the most commonly used Allied engines of World War II, was 27 litres. And this was just the power plant. The P-47 was fitted with a supercharger that took up a significant volume of the aft fuselage, and this gave the P-47 some incredible high-altitude performance.
And that was the Patriotic Shorts. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now a little bit of motivation.
Give it up. Give up that war. You know, the war that you have to really fight is the war against yourself. You have to fight the war against yourself. Now, it's not easy to look in the mirror and to change your own life. It's hard as hell. You have to take responsibility. You have to learn new things. You have to feel uncomfortable. Good. Because discomfort is how we grow. That's how we become strong. If you run away from discomfort and resistance your whole life, you will always be weak.
You will fail in your comfort zone. Success is not a comfortable procedure. It is a very uncomfortable thing to attempt. So you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable if you ever want to be successful. Start putting some pressure on. Put some pressure on yourself.
Personal evolution only happens when there's pressure. The only way you grow is if there's pressure. There's got to be stress.
Most people, their associations are to avoid anything that's uncomfortable. But when you look at comfort and you look at success and progress and the feelings of accomplishment and of getting past certain hurdles in terms of like how you feel about life, a lot of those are connected to discomfort. Like discomfort is your friend. It really is. Like discomfort and not being happy and content with certain situations in life or certain feelings in life. They're massive motivators, and they're amazing at facilitating change.
Your mind and your character are no different than your body and your muscles. If you want to grow as a person, you really have to make friends with pain. Embrace the discomfort. Enjoy the struggle.
A life without pain is a life without challenge. And a life without challenge is a life without growth. So not only do I embrace the challenge, embrace the pain associated with challenge and growth, but I even look forward to it in many regards. Some people think I'm strange, but sometimes I even ask for it. Send me a challenge, God, that you think should rid the world of pain. I invoke, please, give me some challenges here, because I need to be tested. I need to be stronger. I need to grow in my resolve with whatever weakness is in my character. Pain is a beautiful thing. Challenge is what life is about. A life without challenge, a life without pain, is a life without growth. And where there is no growth, there is stale, stagnant energy. And that's where most people live. Because most people's lives are designed around treading a path that is void of challenge. The minute they recognize challenge or pain, they move the other way. This is a primal instinct and normal and natural, but a weak perspective. Your aliveness is found in your pain. Embrace it, love it, and grow from it.
You have two paths in front of you right now. One of them is going to be the harder one today. It's going to be downright painful. You will have to force your brain to think in new ways. You might lose some friends, but as you pull yourself away from that anger and that hate, eventually you will start to feel empowered. You will realize that you have the greatest power of all, the power to change your own life. You will be stronger than you've ever known. The other path is easy, much easier. You don't have to change anything. Everything in your life that you aren't happy about can be someone else's fault. But the end of that road isn't pretty. You will end up broken, searching for ways to numb your pain and your misery.
The bottom line is, you've got to become uncomfortable. You need challenge. But that challenge comes in the form of throwing yourself off a cliff and then learning how to fly on the way down, or pointing to the stars and aiming to reach that shit, and hopefully you land on the moon.
Life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it. Boards torn up, places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time, I's been a climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you stop now. Don't you sit down on the steps, 'cause you find this kind of hard. But I's still going, boy. I's still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. Well, life for none of us has been a crystal stair. But we must keep moving. We must keep going.
Keep working, keep striving, never give up, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. So, keep moving, keep growing, keep learning.
You keep standing. No matter how rough the sea, you keep standing. No matter what, you don't give up. You keep standing, no matter what.
If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving.
Let's say you want something really bad, and you keep trying, and you keep trying, and you keep trying, and on the 10th try, you don't get it still. And then you say, okay, it must be a sign that I need to stop doing what I need to do. But what if you didn't know that on your 11th try, you would have made it. You would have made it happen and got what you wanted to get. So I feel like persistence is important, because if you really, truly love something and you truly believe, you should just do it for the love, and you don't get to where you're going, you still were doing something you love.
Success has nothing to do with potential. It's all about the perseverance of somebody. That will override any endeavor. If you throw shit against the wall, eventually something will stick. You guys that have this potential, don't have this potential, that shit dies. What continues to last forever is a perseverance to always show up. That's what champions do. Every single champion is the same as every ordinary person. The only differential is that they show up to the event every single day. It doesn't matter what you're born with. It doesn't matter your potential, how much, the silver spoon of money you have. All of that can be attained if you show up and you're willing to risk failure for success.
Well, here's what I'm suggesting to you. That when you're working, you have a wall to break through. Let's say a friend of mine who runs a marathon, and he said, let's say that hypothetically, that 18th mile is the wall. He said, Les, when you get there and you're running, he says, everything in you is telling you to stop, to give up. Every muscle is aching. And you're saying to yourself, I can't do it. I can't do it. And you just keep on, and you keep on, and you keep on. It seems like you're moving at slow motion. And then eventually when you break through that 18-mile wall, then you know it's like done, and you're on automatic, and you glide on in. And you know it's there. You know you're going to get to the finish line. And we've all had experiences where we were working on something, and we knew it was possible. And we did those things that were necessary to bring it into reality. We took the responsibility to make it happen. Other people couldn't see it. A lot of people didn't believe it. You were attacked. You were criticized. People were opposing you, but you kept on doing it. And it's going to be hard. Easy is not an option. But if it's hard, we will do it hard. Whatever is required to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. And it's worth it, yes. It's worth whatever we have to do. And once we know that, it is done. It is done. It is done. It is done.
Thank you. And now the daily law for March the 29th.
March 29th. Fuse the intuitive with the rational. A. Albert Einstein called the intuitive or metaphoric mind a sacred gift. He added that the rational mind was a faithful servant. It is paradoxical that in the context of modern life, we have begun to worship the servant and defile the divine. Bob Samples, The Metaphoric Mind. All of us have access to a higher form of intelligence, one that can allow us to see more of the world, to anticipate trends, to respond with speed and accuracy to any circumstance. This intelligence is cultivated by deeply immersing ourselves in a field of study and staying true to our inclinations, no matter how unconventional our approach might seem to others. Through such intense immersion over many years, we come to internalize and gain an intuitive feel for the complicated components of our field. When we fuse this intuitive feel with rational processes, we expand our minds to the outer limits of our potential and are able to see into the secret core of life itself. We then come to have powers that approximate the instinctive force and speed of animals, but with the added reach that our human consciousness brings us. Daily law. This power is what our brains were designed to attain, and we will be naturally led to this type of intelligence if we follow our inclinations to their ultimate ends. Mastery, Chapter 6. Fuse the intuitive with the rational. Mastery.
And that was the daily law for March the 29th from the book The Daily Laws by Robert Greene. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now Bishop Robert Barron.
Criticize another person only in the measure that you are willing to help the person deal with the problem that you're raising. You're critical of someone, maybe legitimately so. All right, To what degree are you willing to help that person deal with the problem? No, I'm not willing at all. Well, then keep your mouth shut. Then don't say anything. If you're totally unwilling to help, don't say anything. Yeah, I'm kind of mildly interested, in helping. All right, then maybe offer a mild criticism. No, I'm in all the way. I'm willing to commit my entire self to helping you deal with that problem. Okay, then go ahead and criticize. Very, very good principle. I think a lot of hurt feelings and resentments and all that would clear up if we...
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Ayn Rand quote of the day. Quote, "Capitalism has been called cruel, yet it brought such hope, progress, and general goodwill that the young people of today who have not seen it find it hard to believe." Unquote. And that was the Ayn Rand quote of the day. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now we'll pick up where we left off with the 33 strategies of war.
From The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. Therefore, a prudent ruler ought not to keep faith, when by so doing it would be against his interest. If men were all good, this precept would not be a good one. But as they are bad, and would not observe their faith with you, so you are not bound to keep faith with them. Nor have legitimate grounds ever failed a prince who wished to show colorable excuse for the non-fulfillment of his promise. Jade for tile. Early in 1821, the Russian foreign minister, Kapodistria, heard news he had long been awaiting. A group of Greek patriots had begun a rebellion against the Turks. Greece was then part of the Ottoman Empire, aiming to throw them out and establish a liberal government. Distria, a Greek nobleman by birth, had long dreamed of involving Russia in Greek affairs. Russia was a growing military power. By supporting the revolution, assuming the rebels won, it would gain influence over an independent Greece and Mediterranean ports for its navy. The Russians also saw themselves as the protectors of the Greek Orthodox Church, and Tsar Alexander I was a deeply religious man. Leading a crusade against the Islamic Turks would satisfy his moral consciousness as well as Russian political interests. It was all too good to be true. Only one obstacle stood in Distria's way. Prince Clemens von Metternich, the Austrian foreign minister. A few years earlier, Metternich had brought Russia into an alliance with Austria and Prussia called the Holy Alliance. Its goal was to protect these nations' governments from the threat of revolution and to maintain a peace in Europe after the turmoil of the Napoleonic Wars. Metternich had befriended Alexander I. Sensing that the Russians might intervene in Greece, he had sent the Tsar hundreds of reports claiming that the revolution was part of a Europe-wide conspiracy to get rid of the continent's monarchies. If Alexander came to Greece's aid, he would be the revolutionaries' dupe and would be violating the purpose of the Holy Alliance. Distria was no fool. He knew that what Metternich really wanted was to prevent Russia from expanding its influence in the Mediterranean, which would upset England and destabilize Europe, Metternich's greatest fear. To Distria, it was simple. He and Metternich were at war over who would have ultimate influence over the Tsar, and Distria had the advantage. He saw the Tsar often and could counteract Metternich's persuasive powers through constant personal contact. The Turks inevitably moved to suppress the Greek rebellion, and as their atrocities against the Greeks mounted, it seemed almost certain that the Tsar would intervene. But in February 1822, as the revolution was reaching a boiling point, the Tsar made what in Distria's eyes was a fatal mistake. He agreed to send an envoy to Vienna to discuss the crisis with Metternich. The prince loved to lure negotiators to Vienna, where he would charm them to death. Distria felt the situation slipping out of his hands. Now he had just one option: to choose the envoy who would go to Vienna and brief him in detail. Distria's choice was a man called Tatishev, who had been Russia's ambassador to Spain. Tatishev was a shrewd, experienced negotiator. Called in for a meeting shortly before he was to leave, he listened carefully as Distria laid out the dangers. Metternich would try to charm and seduce Tatishev. To prevent the Tsar from intervening, he would offer to negotiate a settlement between the Russians and Turks. And of course, he would call for a European conference to discuss the issue. This last was Metternich's favorite ploy. He was always able to dominate these conferences and somehow get what he wanted. Tatishev was not to fall under his spell. He was to give Metternich a note from Distria, arguing that Russia had a right to come to the aid of fellow Christians suffering at the hands of the Turks. And on no account was he to agree to Russia's participation in a conference. On the eve of his departure for Vienna, Tatishev was unexpectedly called in for a meeting with the Tsar himself. Alexander was nervous and conflicted. Unaware of Distria's instructions, he told Tatishev to tell Metternich that he wanted both to act in accordance with the alliance and to meet his moral obligation in Greece. Tatishev decided he would have to delay giving this message as long as he could. It would make his work far too confusing. In his first meeting with Metternich in Vienna, Tatishev took measure of the Austrian minister. He saw him as rather vain, apparently more interested in fancy dress balls and young girls than in Greece. Metternich seemed detached and somewhat ill-informed. The little he said about the situation in Greece betrayed confusion. Tatishev read Distria's note to him, and, as if without thinking, Metternich asked if these were the Tsar's instructions as well. Put on the spot, Tatishev could not lie. His hope now was that the Tsar's rather contradictory instructions would further confuse the prince, letting Tatishev stay one step ahead. In the days to come, Tatishev had a splendid time in the delightful city of Vienna. Then he had another meeting with Metternich, who asked him if they could begin negotiations based on the instructions of the Tsar. Before Tatishev could think, Metternich next asked what Russia's demands might be in this situation. That seemed fair, and Tatishev replied that the Russians wanted to make Greece a protectorate state, to get the alliance's approval for Russian intervention in Greece, on and on. Metternich turned down every proposal, saying his government would never agree to such things, so Tatishev asked him to suggest alternate ideas. Instead, Metternich launched into an abstract discussion of revolution, of the importance of the Holy Alliance, and other irrelevancies. Tatishev left confused and rather annoyed. He had wanted to stake out a position, but these discussions were informal and shapeless. Feeling lost, he had been unable to steer them in the direction he wanted. A few days later, Metternich called Tatishev in again. He looked uncomfortable, even pained. The Turks, he said, had just sent him a note claiming that the Russians were behind the trouble in Greece and asking him to convey to the Tsar their determination to fight to the death to hold on to what was theirs. In solemn tones, suggesting that he was angry at the Turks' lack of diplomacy, Metternich said he thought it beneath his country's dignity to pass this disgraceful message to the Tsar. He added that the Austrians considered Russia their staunchest ally and would support Russia's conditions for resolving the crisis. Finally, if the Turks refused to concede, Austria would break off relations with them. Tatishev was quite moved by this sudden emotional display of solidarity. Perhaps the Russians had misread the prince. Perhaps he was really on their side. Fearing that Distria would misunderstand, Tatishev reported this meeting to the Tsar alone. A few days later, Alexander responded that from now on, Tatishev was to report only to him. Distria was to be excluded from the negotiations. The pace of the meetings with Metternich picked up. Somehow, the two men discussed only diplomatic solutions to the crisis. Russia's right to intervene in Greece militarily was no longer mentioned. Finally, Metternich invited the Tsar to attend a conference on the question in Verona, Italy, a few months later. Here, Russia would lead the debate on how best to settle the matter. It would be at the center of attention. with the Tsar rightly celebrated as Europe's savior in the crusade against revolution. The Tsar happily agreed to attend. Back in St. Petersburg, Distria fumed and ranted to anyone who would listen. But shortly after Tatishev got home, the Russian foreign minister was kicked out of office for good. And at the later conference in Verona, just as he had predicted, the Greek crisis was resolved in precisely the way that best served Austria's interests. The Tsar was the star of the show, but apparently he did not care or notice that he had signed a document essentially precluding Russia from intervening unilaterally in the Balkans, thereby conceding a right insisted upon by every Russian leader since Peter the Great. Metternich had won the war with Distria more completely than the former minister had ever imagined possible.
And that was the 33 Strategies of War, Chapter 21, Negotiate While Advancing. Back in a minute. Thank you. If you're a Democrat, a right-thinking Democrat, you need to vote Republican and become a Republican. We are the true party of government. We are the ones that love government. The Democrat Party just loves power. Back in a minute. Thank you. So the left is bluffing. They're always bluffing. And once I know that they are using fear to bully and intimidate people and using various tricks to silence me, then I'm able to lose my fear and regain my effectiveness. One of their prevalent tricks is attitude. The left will act as if certain things are inevitable, for instance, and they've used the false confidence to promote the legalization of marijuana. The solution? We can do the same thing. We can act as if the complete abolition of abortion is inevitable. After all, Roe v. Wade is already gone. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Policecraft by Adam Plantinga.
14. Predators. For us to live any other way was nuts. To us, those goody-good people who worked shitty jobs for bum paychecks and took the subway to work every day and worried about their bills, were dead. I mean, they were suckers. They had no balls. If we wanted something, we just took it. If anyone complained twice, they got hit so bad, believe me, they never complained again. Ray Liotta as mobster Henry Hill, Goodfellas. What is a predator? Someone who's decided they're over this whole basic humanity horse shit. They'll murder a Special Olympian for his wallet and high-five each other afterward. They'll make a woman drink drain cleaner and then videotape her vomiting for their sexual pleasure as her stomach sprouts holes. In 2016, Dwight Boone Dottie, a reputed gunman for a local Chicago gang, lured a 9-year-old into an alley by offering him candy and shot him in the head in a revenge murder stemming from a dispute with the boy's father. Then he bragged about it in a rap. If you're holding out to see if there's a line these people won't cross, get a comfortable chair, because you'll be waiting a while. Predators' criminal histories boast carjackings, kidnappings, and brutal assaults. They have records in multiple states. For some of them, the only crime they haven't committed is something relatively uncommon, like arson. And that's the really best thing you can say about them. They haven't burned anything to the ground yet, or at least haven't been caught for it. Their rap sheets will cycle through an entire ream of paper with the only significant spaces between arrests occurring when they were confined to state prison. Or when you try to run their criminal record, your computer screen will say, "Record too large for transmission. Request mailed transcript." They are committing crimes every single day. You go to work each morning. Unofficially, predators do too. Some predators follow a familiar pattern. Felon by age 14, drop out of school by 15, a baby or two on the way by 16, right on track. They have a cool 100 felony arrests before they've turned 30. Some are so steeped in the criminal justice system that they'll quote the proper penal code section when they talk to their investigator. This here is more of a 212.5 situation, a parolee once announced to me, and he was exactly right. He was familiar with that law, having broken it many times before. Predators don't always see themselves as predators. Some see themselves in a more noble light. You see the tattoo on the murdered drug dealer that reads, "Live a soldier, die a soldier." Exactly what cause was he fighting for? A more equitable distribution of heroin? Maybe we can go ahead and cancel the 21-gun salute for this fallen warrior. For a predator, going to lockup can also be a time of reunions. "I'm in here with a nigga I went to elementary with," one felony assault suspect cheerfully told a relative on a jail call I listened to. But he wasted no time wondering how the victims of his violent crimes were faring, opting instead to focus his attention on the quality of institutional meals. "They're giving me some bitch-ass cheese and bread," he groused. Then he complained he was bored. I looked at a crime scene photo that showed one of the 4 victims of his baseball bat assault, a petite 22-year-old whose arm he shattered and whom he hit so hard in the skull that it created a fissure deep enough to see the soft tissue of the cerebrum. I was betting she wasn't bored. She was busy trying to process the extent of her brain damage and wondering if she'd ever be able to use her arm the same way again. Predators aren't looking to get rehabbed in jail. They go inside to enhance their street cred and learn from their mistakes so they can become more effective offenders upon release. It's crime college with an open enrollment. Some predators are looking to give the prison guards their money's worth. One of their more revolting practices is to fill a styrofoam cup with a cocktail of urine, feces, and semen and call a guard over to pose an innocuous question. When the guard opens his mouth to respond, the inmate tosses the contents of the cup in his face. Feel free to check out www.prisonjobs.org for correctional hiring opportunities in your area today. Some folks view the Hells Angels as the last of a vanishing breed of outlaw patriots. They got the outlaw part right, and hopefully the vanishing part right too. Don't be fooled by the toy drives and the stories of angels helping stranded motorists. Their civic exterior is a facade. The Hells Angels aren't merely a motorcycle club. They're a predatory criminal street gang. And don't just take my word for it. Ask any gang expert across the country. The Angels shoot their rivals at casinos, carry daggers and chains to stab and bludgeon their enemies, or just crack off the side view mirror of a motorist who annoys them. Sure, they tend not to commit street crime in the same obvious fashion as the Crips or the Latin Kings, but they're no less dangerous. They're not just sitting around debating the best weight of motor oil for their bikes. They're debating whether they should murder their rival by detonation or knife.
And that was the first part of Chapter 14, Predators. So normally I go a little bit longer, but this chapter sounds like it's going to be very intense. So I'm going to do it in very small segments. So it's a 30-minute chapter, so we'll take it maybe about 5 or 10 minutes at a time. And that was Policecraft by Adam Plantinga. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.